Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Del Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm very excited to have Nina Lockwood with us today. Nina is an advanced transformative coach, artist, and writer with over 30 years of experience and multiple certifications in the fields of psychology, personal development, energy medicine traditions. She writes, speaks, and facilitates programs that point us to our true nature and how that knowledge can transform the way we live, work, love, create, and share our gifts in the world. In addition to individual and corporate coaching, Nina offers 2 online programs, Love in Action, and From the Yoga Mat to the Boardroom. She is also the host of Creativity Conversations, a podcast that investigates and expands the nature of creativity. Well, hi, Nina. It's so great to be on the other end of this seat with you. I know that you interviewed me a couple of weeks ago, so it's just fun to have it go the other way around now. So
it is. The more the merrier.
Exactly. So I would love to hear a little bit about, I know we're both, I'm a Three Principles practitioner. I know that you work in other modalities too, but I would love to hear a little bit about your life and what led you to coming across the principles, because I know that you've had a very interesting life. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey. Would be wonderful.
How far back would you like me to go?
We have half an hour. You can decide.
All right. Well, I'll definitely shorten it up then. I think that from the time that I was a teenager, my father died when I was 15. He had his first heart attack when I was 10. And that catapulted me into a questioning, seeking mode. Why are we even here? What's going on? And from that point on, I was very interested in, and I studied the Eastern traditions and yoga, and was always interested in going deeper and seeing beyond the kind of the veil or the screen of life, to see what was there. And that took me to a lot of different places and different spiritual teachers. And one of the things that I was very grateful for, and it was almost as though I was following a red thread, was all of those different teachings were pointing to a wisdom that we all have, and different teachings come from different directions. And while I found them very useful and satisfying at different points, I was still left with finding a way to integrate them and have them make sense. And I think it was really when I came across the principles that I began to see how my thoughts were getting in the way of my understanding. And although that was certainly spoken about in other traditions, it was really only when I saw a way to apply a different understanding about the nature of thought and who we are that things began to fall into place for me in a much more cohesive way and a much more freeing way, so that when I went back and looked at those wisdom traditions, I had a different awareness, a different level of meaning to them.
Yeah. No, I totally relate to that. That's exactly how I felt. I was a spiritual seeker for many, many years as well, and but there was still that sort of seeking. And when I came across the principles, it sort of just made everything I'd already learned make more sense. So it's not that it was talking about anything different, but the simplicity, I think, it clarified a lot of what I'd already learned. I think I may have shared with you before, my son calls it Buddhism for dummies, because it just, spills it down to the essence of what many spiritual traditions are talking about and pointing to, as you say.
Yeah.
So I love, you describe yourself as a mystic, a creative, and a gentle mischief maker, and all in the service of love. So I've got to ask you about that. So tell me more about that.
Maybe the best way to describe it is that we can, I think this has happened to me, so I've gotten caught up in the flow of it, is that the more we're willing to push the edge of what we know, the more possibilities that we see exist for us. And I recently came across a word that was coined by Norman Vincent Peale back in the 50s in his book, The Power of Positive Thinking, which I never read. I just reading the title, you kind of get the gist of it. But he had coined a phrase called a possibilitarian. And I loved it. I just came across it recently. And what it suggests, obviously, is that we are all have the potential to see our possibilities if we are willing to look. So my mischief making is all about pushing the boundaries. What else? What else? Well, what if we did this? What if we looked at it this way? What if we went to the edge and looked over? What if we jumped? What would happen then? And I think that for me, that kind of exploration done in the spirit of love can only bring us to new understanding and a lightness that sometimes we forget with all the things that are going on in life.
Yeah. Gosh, I love what you're saying, and it's sort of lit something up in me listening to you, because it's so sad, but I think as a culture we put emphasis on product and I mean, we teach our children that, it's all about sort of achieving certain things, achieving excellence, and I think we've lost out on that playing, that exploring. It's like you've got to be sure, you've got to be certain, you've got to get it right, and I just find that so sad.
I know, and it starts from day school.
Yeah,
exactly. And goes up.
I'm thinking we do it to our children, we did it to ourselves, and then we do it to our children.
One of the things that I've found, and I may have shared this with you at another time, is that the same thing, because I do a lot of artwork, the same things that get in my way as an artist are the same things that get in our way, whether we're in a boardroom, at the kitchen table, driving in our car, trying to get something off the ground. It is all that pressure to produce something, to be successful, to have it be better than, rather than just playing and just experimenting, just to see what's there. And I think you're right. I think we as a culture have forgotten it, and how there's such an emphasis on being an expert, so that you know something, very deeply, but only this wide. And there's the whole world out there that is for us. It's available to us to enjoy, to appreciate, to love. And if I'm focused only on the product rather than the process, everything is changed by that. And conversely, when we are in the process and really immersing ourselves in it, it's an effortless flow. And who doesn't want that?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm realizing how many times I have got in my own way with what you've just shared, that insecurity, that comparison, that expectation of myself, the judgment. I remember I had gone to art school when I was 16, and then I didn't I didn't paint, or I didn't do any art until I was in my 40s again. And I went back and I took some classes, and it was in oil painting. And I'd never painted with oils. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, oh my God, I remember that first day. I went in the hallway and literally cried because I felt so out of control, because I couldn't control the paints. And I'm thinking, what a missed opportunity that I would do that to myself, that I wouldn't have just gone in there and just played.
But I think that's I think what you're expressing is very common. And I'll share something that happened to me when I went back after many years and got back into creating art. I took a collage class with a woman. It was maybe a 4-day workshop in her studio. And I didn't feel well. And I kept wondering why I felt nauseous, but I was motoring through it anyway. And at one point she said, a lot of times when people are out of their comfort zone, they get sick. They start to feel sick to their stomach. She never looked at me. I don't know if she knew what was going on inside of me, but I realized that's a very common experience. We get the jitters. We don't know what to do with ourselves. Whereas with children, doesn't matter. They're just in there having fun. And all our overthinking and how am I doing and how does this look and how does this compare to someone else, that gets in our way. And it's a training that we've grown up with in our culture that I think once you begin to see it, you can really realize that you don't need to keep believing it.
I know.
You know that old saying, don't believe everything you think.
Exactly.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah. And I'm thinking back, I don't know about you, but when I first went to school, I used to love drawing before I got to school. But when I got to school, I remember hearing, no, the sky must meet the ground. That's wrong. No, cows don't disappear off pages. You've got to keep the cow on the page. And I remember thinking, there are so many rules. I used to think this was fun. Now there's all these rules that I've got to learn about drawing. Yeah. How many of us get that implanted at that very young age that what we're doing naturally is wrong, and there's a right way to do it innocently, but that's the message.
And what is it like, that experience of going from rehearsing over and over again, rewriting, doing something over and over again so that it looks and sounds perfect when you finally do it? But I've seen two things happen. One, it sounds so stale and so rote that there's no life to it. Yeah. And the other part of it is, am I remembering everything I intended to say, rather than remembering that there is something in us that will carry us through. It may not always be gems of wisdom, but it will be in the moment and it will be responsive to whatever is happening around us. And that is, to me, so much more valuable than getting it right and sounding perfect and getting lots of applause. That genuine flow, that's delight.
Yeah, I love that. I know what you're saying. It's that wonderful thing of when wisdom speaks to you and when you're in the moment and something just comes up for you to sort of share, and you're like, really? That's what I'm going to say next. It's just, sometimes it's so sort of spontaneous, but there is such a delight in that.
Mm-hmm. Or not even knowing, and suddenly it's coming out of your mouth, and the person says, I can't believe you said that.
That's what I mean.
Saying, I can't either.
Exactly. That's what I mean. It's already out, and you're like, okay, well, apparently that was what I was meant to say.
Apparently.
I love that. So I know that you do. So we're talking about, the creativity and art and how you now. With your coaching, do you coach a lot of artists? And because I also know you do business coaching, but you say there's no difference in how.
I don't think so. I don't think there is really. The more I talk to people, both in business settings and in individual private settings, it's the same thing. 9 times out of 10, if it isn't 10 times out of 10, it's our thinking that derails us from going forward to create what we love and what we really feel truly aligned with. And I think that's where we get into trouble, is that it's as though, people talk about shiny object syndrome. I think there's an equivalent with thoughts, although I haven't come up with a name for it yet, is that we're on a direction, we want to go this way, we want to be involved in this and build something or create something. But these thoughts over here are taking our attention away from what it is we want to do and what we really care about. And that can really throw us off track. So it doesn't matter whether we're painting a painting or, as I was saying, anything else. It's the same dynamic that veils the creativity and the natural expression that is part of what everybody has. It's part of how we're built, part of our true nature. And I think when we begin to explore that more, our true nature, who we really are, then what we love becomes clearer to us, and we can hear its song and follow it. And the voices that are on the sidelines, they just don't seem so important.
Yeah. Same thing with me. A lot of my clients who are creatives have this, they think their creativity is it's they're the ones that are doing the creating, and they are fully responsible. And then they get all this heavy, tight thinking around it, like I must be creative, not realizing. So talk to that. Talk to about where creativity is really coming from, because I love it because it lets us off the hook.
Well, yes, you're you're preaching to the choir here, but yes, absolutely. I think that it's one of the best things that we can discover is that who we are is, there's no end to it. It's not as though we have a spigot that we turn on and the creativity comes through. It just is always there for us, whether we make an effort to turn it on or off. And that boundless, infinite potential is who we really are. I mean, when you think about it, who we are as individuals goes far beyond our skills and our conditioning in life and our genetics. But that spiritual dimension that we have is infinite. So if that's who we really are, it's ludicrous to think that there's a limit to it, or that we don't have access to it the way somebody else does. Mm-hmm. It's only, as you say, when we get those insecure thoughts coming in and niggling at us, trying to convince us otherwise, that we don't have that sense of, okay, there's always something here, leap and the net will appear, or else we'll fly, one or the other. But that constant emphasis that many of us have grown up with to be safe, and even that perspective of lack, that there's not enough creativity to go around. I don't really have it, which is what I hear all the time. Oh, I'm not creative. But as soon as you listen to somebody talk about what they do and how they do it, it's obvious that they are. They've just put themselves in a box that says, I don't wield a paintbrush. Mm-hmm. But everything we do comes from this source of infinite possibilities. And that is just the most delightful place to live from.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And it's so true. It really is. So did you notice a big change in your creativity when you came across the principles?
Yes, I did. I became much less interested in being self-conscious, and much more interested in what wanted to come through. So a lot of the collage work that I do, I will paint the materials first, paint the papers first, and then it'll be like I'm throwing a party. Mm-hmm. Okay, who wants to show up? What wants to go where? Oh, you want to come here? Come on in. And it's a kind of a free-for-all, but there's no worry to it. There's just an exploration. Whereas in the past, I would be much more concerned about, well, is this correct? Is this balance? Is this composition, texture, light? And once I started realizing how much I didn't have to pay attention to my thinking, then it became so much more fun, and it spilled over into everything else that I was doing, whether it was coaching or baking or throwing a dinner party, which I'm looking forward to doing again someday soon. But from one place, the freedom expanded out into the rest of my life, and it was mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you were saying there, and it's reminding me of, and I'm sure the same for you. I did, a number of different coaching trainings before coming across the principles, and just like you were saying, it's like, does this tool go here? Does this go here? Should I do this? And you're putting pieces together, but what's so beautiful about the principles, it's like you can just forget all those rules. You can just follow what wisdom is saying, what to do next, what to say and what to do, and just trust that there isn't a right way or a wrong way.
Yeah, there's just a way that is emerging in the moment.
Yeah, I love that.
I do too. I think that the older I get, the more I appreciate simplicity. And I can see in retrospect how I made things so complicated, or I accepted that that was the way it was. It needed to be complicated. It needed to be complex. And yet that really flies in the face of the nature of flow and the nature of wisdom. It's simple. There's not a lot of background noise. There's not a lot of drama. It can be complex, but it isn't difficult. Complex is probably not the right word. I think richness is a better word. And you don't have to manufacture it. You don't have to build it in because it's already built in.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So I'm thinking about your podcast, which I was, as I say, very, very lucky to be on a few weeks ago. So you interview people. It's called Creativity Conversations, and you interview a lot of different people, not necessarily just through the three principles, but just in different creative pursuits. So how did that come about? And I'd love to hear what you see when from all those interviews you've done.
Well, it's almost been a year now, and I'll be on my 41st one this week. What I wanted to do originally was, with this conversation about creativity, it became so clear to me that people were only associating it with artists or perhaps scientists, or educators. But I thought, well, that's silly. If we all knew that we were creative, we could have a ball, and we could, again, tap into that possibilitarianism, that multi-potential light that all of us have. So I started to talk to people about, well, how do you see creativity, and where does it show up in your world? And whether it's someone who is working for inclusion and diversity and equity in the workplace, or being a part of making business a force for good in the world, or an artist, or a musician, or a coach, or a baker. The same things are at play, that they all say to a person that their ideas come from somewhere else. They get out of the way and something comes in. And it's not that they don't have to get in gear or prime the pump, so to speak, but once they do, they realize that there is a force bigger than they are, that as they step aside, that something can emerge that has more beauty and more far-reaching consequences than if they tried to figure it out on a more logical, analytical basis. This is across the board, and it's just reassuring and reaffirming that what we have learned through the principles is universal. It's not necessarily confined to the three principles world, but the principles work because they are universal.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter what hat you're wearing or what you're doing. The principles are still in action, the same ideas of mind and how our feelings reflect our thinking, and how we have the opportunity not necessarily to control our thinking, but to let go of it and realize what it is, which is, like clouds in the sky. We don't have to make them into thunderstorms.
Yeah, it's so funny. I love that you're saying that your conversations are not just with painters or artists in the traditional sense, that it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're constantly in creation. Every second of every day we are creating something, is being created through us.
Of course, it makes perfect sense. If you just look out into the natural world, the same thing is happening out there, and we're a reflection of that. There's always something emerging. There's always something growing. There's always some new weather pattern coming in. There's always something in play, and it's just a misunderstanding to think that that's not true for us as well, because we are part of the natural world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how that we can, I remember my children, because I was, you know, I'm a very, I can almost paint photorealism. I mean, it's like so I could do it as a very young child. I could just draw you and it would look exactly like you. And my children grew up thinking, you know, we're not an artist. We're not artists because, you know, mum's the artist. She can paint. And the irony was that I didn't think I was creative because I was just, as one of my art teachers once told me when I was younger, I was great at copying life, but I wasn't creative. So it's so interesting how we can hear things or make assumptions. Like I assumed I wasn't creative. I could just copy life. And my children assumed that they weren't creative because they couldn't copy life like I could. And it's innocent, the way we tell ourselves these stories that, you know, shut us down or shut that creative flow that isn't naturally wants to come through us with these labels of I can't and I'm not and the comparisons as we talked about, or, you know, I'm a business person, I'm not a creative. Well, my God, what a wonderful way to create through business. It's just this infinite potential in every direction.
Yes. And boy, I would love it if that was something that was taught to people at a young age. Wouldn't that be amazing? Just to realize that we don't have to slog through life. We don't have to make our businesses so hard. That if we are willing to look beyond the veil of our thinking, there's a whole world that's available to us without. We don't have to have a special account. You know, it's always available to us. And even when we're in the thick of, oh, I'm fresh out of ideas, I don't know what I'm going to do. As soon as we take that stop and say, wait a minute, that just can't be, that something occurs to us. And it may not be the perfect answer, but it does, the next steps don't stop occurring to us. If we're just willing to wait and see what happens, what wants to show up next, it will.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking I mean, yes, nothing ever stops. It is constantly flowing through us. But if it does slow down, it's usually of our own making, because we've layered all these, you know, beliefs on top of it, or that sort of, as you said before, that fear of it stopping. Well, it's never going to stop. That fear of it stopping can sort of have you feel that it's slowing down.
Yeah.
But if you let go of that fear, it just starts gushing again, coming forward.
Yeah, I think that's true. One of the things that I learned when I was practicing energy medicine, which I did for about 20 years, was the most important thing to me was the idea of flow, and that well-being had to do with a healthy flow of energy moving through the body-mind. And it's the same concept with the principles, that there is a constant flow, and we're the ones that back it up.
Yeah.
We do things that get in the way, and a lot of times it's thinking, and a lot of times it's believing what we are being taught, rather than letting that flow of energy move through us, however it's going to do it. You know, and I think what I keep just being in amazement about is that how the principles are a reflection of so much of the way life works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Share a bit more about that.
When I was teaching energy medicine, one of the things that I found the most powerful was not so much reducing pain or chasing symptoms, but that when we are not caught up in our heads and we're not preoccupied with how our bodies are feeling, we are able to get into a very, very deep place within ourselves. It's rather miraculous. And I often would think that that place, that maybe if you call it ground of being, is the most important thing for us to have contact with, because that it's as though when we're in that place, we realize that all of the worry that we have, the insecurity that we have, can't touch that place of well-being and groundedness and peacefulness that's at the heart of our being.
Mm.
When we're in touch with that, boy, life is grand.
Mm. Yeah, it really is. I love that. That's beautiful. And that would be a wonderful place to complete our chat today. Our time is up, but my gosh, I could keep going with you. That is such a beautiful place to stop and reflect on.
Well,
So
thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to be able to talk with you again.
I know, same with me. I wish it was longer, but definitely I hope to see you again soon in person. And this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Always.
Okay. Well, take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching and mentoring packages, please reach out to me at Adey-Jones@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you.